Evan Harris, welcome to the programme. Now, you're with Hacked Off. For years and years, Hacked Off has been complaining about press intrusion. You want to regulate it. Now, in this particular case, the press decided there was no public interest reason for intruding, and you're complaining about it. How does that work?
So the point is, the Secretary of State should not be, those questions, should you be regulating the press? The Secretary of State should not be regulating the press. John Whittingdale has done two things that are unique. He's first decided to reverse the government's previous policy that there will be a second part of the Leveson inquiry to look at the cover-up of the police and the press and the corporate governance failures on hacking, and to cancel a cover-up investigation is a serious matter. The Prime Minister said it will go ahead. John Whittingdale in 2013 said it will go ahead. Now his position is it might not. It's his decision.
But what evidence do you have that any of these decisions were taken because he knew the papers had these stories?
I'll explain. The second thing he's done is that Parliament passed a law to give victims access to justice to sue the press and to encourage newspapers into the Royal Charter system. As you know, laws need to be commenced by a signature of the Secretary of State with no further action. He has chosen to suspend indefinitely commencement of that, to the applause of the Society of Editors, to whose conference he made this announcement without any consultation.
So what's the answer to my question? What evidence is there? What evidence is there?
I asked him in a recent meeting.
No, let me ask you again, because I want you to know. What evidence is there that given John Whittingdale has a long track record of being against Leveson-style regulation?
It. No,
in The Guardian this morning made it clear in 2012, and part of their social media profile, that he was opposed to Leveson.
He's not. He was.
In 2012 he was.
He voted in favour of Leveson in March 2013. He spoke out in favour of Leveson when the report was announced in November. Now, there may be something that's inaccurate in a newspaper. Shock, horror. I'm telling you that I've met him and the Prime Minister with victims.
John Whittingdale has always opposed Leveson.
That's wrong.
The Guardian going back to 2012.
That is wrong. And the government's policy, because there was a cross-party agreement signed, was that there would be a part two, and these incentives and access to justice would come forward. But the Secretary, what he told me...
What is the evidence?
I just want to tell you what he told me. This is the evidence. He said to me in a recent meeting, I said, why have you taken the power to decide whether to sign into law this thing that Parliament passed? He said it will keep the press on their toes. OK? Now, it's not the job of a Secretary of State to keep the press on their toes, and until they give an alternative reason for why the government has decided to intervene in press regulation, which all the parties opposed, the newspapers opposed, Hacked Off opposed and Leveson opposed, there is no other reason why he would be doing that if it wasn't a suspicion that he wanted to please the editors to stop them publishing.
So let's get this right. You are now claiming that he has acted as a minister in the ways that you've described because he knew the newspapers were looking at this story.
There doesn't appear to be any other explanation, unless it's the case that the Prime Minister just breaks all promises he makes to victims and to Parliament, regardless.
So what evidence do you have for this?
Well, as I say, because if this wasn't the case, why wouldn't he have told the Prime Minister on appointment, look, they've got this story on me, there's no public interest justification, they've not published it, but obviously if this ever got out, it might be implied that there's an obvious conflict of interest. They know that I didn't declare an overseas trip that arguably should have been declared.
How did he know when he became a minister that the press were investigating this?
Well, he has, I think it's been made clear in the articles that did publish this, which weren't in the newspapers originally, but on the Byline website.
So you don't know whether when he was appointed cabinet minister that he knew the newspapers were looking at this story, do you?
I think he did. I think that has been made clear.
Well, but do you know or don't you?
Well, I think that's the question should be put to him. If it's true...
Well, you were the one that made the claim that he should have told the Prime Minister when he was a cabinet minister. What I'm asking you is, did he know that there were investigations going on? And you now tell me you don't know.
Well, it has been claimed by, and not disputed by him, that he was approached and he said, at the time, I ended it when I found out what she did, etc., etc. But if that is the case... And if that is the case, then he should have told the Prime Minister. If it isn't the case, then his position is much better. Because if he didn't know they had a story, how could it be influencing him?
James Cusick, the journalist for The Independent, has Hacked Off been working with him?
We talked. He's been following the trial, so we talked to him as a journalist.
But have you been working? Has Hacktoff been working with him on this story?
No, you will not find, even though lots of people on the social media have tweeted the story, which has been going around social media for a long time, you will not find that Hacktoff has linked to this story before.
So you've not been
BBC
working with
covered it.
Mr. Cusick on this or encouraging him to publish?
No, he's asked us questions, and quite reasonably, because he's a good journalist, about whether we have any reason to believe that John Whittingdale is seeking to appease the press. And I've given him the two examples I've given you. And I also we supplied Hansard references where John Whittingdale said there must be Part 2 Leveson and we will implement the Crime and Courts Act
Is it not,
prior to his U-turn.
is it not the case that this original story, as it was pitched, was not, as we've subsequently discovered, that Mr. Whittingdale was dating somebody, he then discovered what she was, and he ended the dating, but that he had been actively using this prostitute, and that was the original story, and it turned out there was no evidence for that. Isn't that the case?
I've no idea.
You don't?
Because, yeah, if there's no public interest in the story, then we don't believe, just like we don't believe with this celebrity threesome that the press desperately want to publish, even though a judge has said there's no public
Do you
interest.
think that story should be
We don't believe it
published?
should be published.
Hold on. You don't believe this story of this celebrity should be published, despite the...
Because the judge has said there's no public interest.
but judges
We
can
have
get it wrong.
We follow the rule of law. You may not,
Yeah.
okay, but I think the
But what
BBC
evidence do
Code
you have that
tends
I
to
haven't?
follow the rule of law. So, yes, editors might
Well,
say
it's
the
followed the-
judge has
it's
got
been
it
published
wrong,
in Scotland.
and what they should do is appeal. There was
Is it-
there was a judgment that said that the rights are engaged on both sides, freedom of expression and Article 8 rights of privacy, including of the children, and the judge said on the facts known to the judge in the Court of Appeal, this should not be published.
you agree
in
with
England
that
and Wales.
judgment?
I respect the judgment.
No,
whichever
that's a
way it would
different...
have
Of
gone.
course,
I do.
we all respect...
I do, because I
But do you
don't
agree with
substitute
it?
my judgment for that of a judge in our court system.
Why not?
If
It's
the
a free
judge had gone
society.
the other way, because I don't believe it's my job, nor do I believe it's John Whittingdale's job to decide what the press should print. There's a code of practice, there should be an independent regulator, and there should be the rule of law.
Is it not been the case that Hacktoff has been pushing the line that the Mail on Sunday was ready to publish this story, but that senior editors and management in the Mail organisation intervened, and that's the line your organisation has been pushing privately? It was then discovered there was not a shred of evidence to establish that. Isn't that the
James
case?
Cusick, an experienced broadsheet journalist who has had the courage to cover press issues, which doesn't make him popular in the press, said in his article, which people can read on Byline and on Open Democracy, that the Independent told him that their landlords, the Daily Mail, did not want the Independent running this story, the public interest aspects of the story, not the other, which is what the Independent were going to run, because it would damage their asset. And it's quite clear.
Do you have
they
any
see John
evidence that the
Whittingdale as an
Mail
asset.
pulled this story?
I saw what James Cusick wrote in The Independent.
Which isn't evidence.
Well, the Mail can come on your programme. I haven't seen the Mail come to defend their actions at all. So I don't know why you're asking. I'm the last person.
Because
to
what
know
I'm trying
what is in
to
Paul Dacre's mind, though I have a
find
strong
out
suspicion.
is how close Hacktoff were involved in getting this story out.
Right, nothing. We had no involvement in any of the stuff to do with the allegations on his private life. We were asked by not just that journalist but other journalists, is there any evidence that John Whittingdale has changed government policy, giving himself power over the press? And we said yes. He has said that it's not necessarily the case that Leveson Part 2 will go ahead, to applause from the press. It's in the Times, government sources.
Well,
You can see
Sajid
it there.
Javid said Part 2 wouldn't go ahead when he was Culture Secretary.
No, he didn't.
He said he didn't want to proceed with any more
No, he
with
didn't.
Leveson.
No, he didn't.
Well,
Believe me,
we'll just have
it's
to-
my job to know what they've said.
Well,
and to
I know
follow
you
it.
think of nothing else these days, but that's
I'm
what
declaring my
that's
interest
my
that I'm paid to have the
understanding
facts.
of it. That essentially Sajid Javid killed this. But let me
Well,
ask
I
you
mean-
on Patterson this: whenever Mr. Whittingdale found out that there were press investigations into this, should he not have informed the Prime Minister?
I think this is a most extraordinary outbreak of humbug. John had done absolutely nothing wrong. What he did was, when he was a backbencher, as soon as he found out
chairman of the
He's
select
the
committee.
woman he's having an affair with had an embarrassing background. He stopped the whole thing.
I understand
This is
that.
14 months before he became a cabinet minister. I just don't think.
I
the
know
pre-
all
and the
that, but
press
when
haven't-
he
well, the
found
press haven't
out
published it.
there were several newspapers, we believe up to 4 newspapers, tabloids and The Independent, now looking at this and looking to make something of it. Whether there was something of it or not is another matter. But should he not, given his role as Culture Secretary, should he not have informed the Prime Minister?
I've no idea when he found out, and I don't know what form the investigations took. Investigations are going on the whole time into all sorts of public people.
Yes, but
I just think
by
honestly, that-
some time last year, Mr. Whittingdale knew that there were these investigations into his relationship. That is clear. That's true, isn't it?
It
So-
seems he hasn't denied that he knew. He
Well,
must
I've
have
no
known
idea.
to know.
Well, they must have
but to
gone
say-
to talk to him.
He
at some
didn't
to say
read
that
about it
he's,
for the first time on Byline.
You're talking about Evans as if he's some sort of rogue Elephant Jones that's pounding around making up his own policy. He's been completely consistent all his career that he does not want to see state intervention interfering with the press. And he's absolutely right on that.
I agree, neither do
And
we.
any major decision like this will be a collective government decision. He'll talk to the Prime Minister.
All right.
And the Prime Minister's
he'll-
just spent
he'll-
a
let me
party
ask
with
you-
Let's
Rebecca
stop
Rees
at
again.
Leveson too.
We're back to
I
square
think
one, aren't
the
we?
government position